and South Korea take up formation off our wings. Hours earlier during our flight, North Korea test-fired a mid-range ballistic missile, a reminder of the threats in the Pacific. You want to be seen by both allies and adversaries.
We want to be seen by allies and adversaries.
It is still a head-turner
It
when
is.
you take it around the world.
It is.
But it's China that the U.S. is watching most closely. In October, a Chinese fighter jet intercepted a B-52 flying over the South China Sea at night, coming within 10 feet of the bomber. By number of ships, China has the world's largest navy and will soon have the world's largest air force, according to the commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. Beijing is rapidly modernizing its military, including its strategic forces, and they're not part of any non-proliferation treaty, obscuring their nuclear assets. After 19 hours of flying and 14 more to go, a warning light signals trouble with one of the plane's main engines. The crew runs through the checklists.
Throttles, number 5.
Number 5.
Confirmed.
They make the decision to shut down the engine. There is no panic, just a management of risk. Nearing the 30-hour mark of the flight, we see our second sunrise over Washington State's Mount Rainier.
And although the crew is tired, they all know there's still a critical task ahead, and that is getting the B-52 back on the ground, and that is one of the most difficult parts of the mission.
On final approach, the B-52, which has been in the air nearly 15 hours longer than the longest commercial flight in the world, has one final surprise.
One gear not down.
Affirm, right. Main gear is not down.
Let's go ahead and emergency extended.
Flight Mylar 11 touches down at 3 in the afternoon after 33 hours in the air. A mission that showed the abilities and the age of a jet that remains critical to the Air Force.
Despite how many years the B-52 has been running, she is a tough girl.
Officers we spoke with in Air Force Global Strike Command say countries like Japan are requesting more B-52 flights. They want to see the bomber in their skies. It is not just a measure of assurance between the U.S. and its allies. It's also a message to adversaries like China, who are very much aware of those B-52 missions, especially the long-range ones. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida held a meeting on Wednesday in which they said there would be increased defense security cooperation, more integration on things like command and control between the militaries, and making sure these militaries can continue to move together. Biden said it is the most significant upgrade to the alliance since it began. Oren Lieberman, CNN in the Pentagon.
An important flight at an important time. Still to come, we're going to have some more on the passing of O.J. Simpson.
Request flight following. Squawk 46768Y1362 Alpha Yankee 1362. Roger 8Y1362 Alpha Yankee 1362.
ordnance, posing severe risks to civilians, especially for children. And the team found unexploded 1,000-pound bomb lying on the main intersection and inside schools.
Let's go live now to Tarek Abba Azoum in Rafah in southern Gaza. Tarek, what more can you tell us about the strike on that market?
Yes, in fact, that deadly strike has at least killed 6 Palestinians, as it has completely destroyed the Fras market, one of the oldest and most famous markets in the territory, as thousands of people were visiting that market on a daily basis. But this market has been no longer visited because of the great internal wave of displacement for the majority of Gazans to the south here. But that was not the only airstrike that had been targeting the northern part of the Gaza Strip. One of the latest has targeted a residential house in Jabalia al-Balad, where at least a number of Palestinians have been killed, including one of the top officials in the Ministry of Interior and Hamas-run government, who has been described, according to Israeli reports, that he was securing humanitarian convoys that have been delivered to the Gaza Strip in order to be later distributed to the majority of displaced families there. So it seems that attacks on aid seekers and also people who have been securing it have been raging amid unstoppable bombardment as well for residential houses, specifically in Ad-Daraj neighborhood, where a number of Palestinians there have been killed and injured, and those injured have been transferred to Al-Ahli Arab Hospital to receive medical treatment.
And Tarek, even as we hear the sound of military drones above you there, I mean, what more are you hearing about this Israeli military operation on the outskirts of the Nusrat refugee camp?
Yes, the drones and even fighter jets do not leave the sky of Rafah district since the early hours of today's morning, as the focus right now of the Israeli attacks has been driven to Al-Nusayrat, a refugee camp, as they have been announcing that they started a very intense military operation there, as till now they have attacked and destroyed 2 mosques and 2 schools in the northern part of Al-Nusayrat refugee camp, killing a number of Palestinians and injuring others. Who have been injured have been transferred to Al-Aqsa Hospital for medical treatment now. The battles are still taking place as well in the adjacent towns and close to Al-Nusayrat refugee camp, specifically in Al-Mughraqa area, where the Gaza's government media office has been describing the situation there to be really dangerous, as the Israeli military now is expanding its military operations there, where right now Palestinians believe that what is happening in Al-Nusayrat refugee camp is a part of the Israeli policy to negotiate under intense fire. They have been using their force on the ground there just to get and to gain more political gains from the Palestinian perspective, without any let-up in fighting there till now, Kerry.
Tarek, thanks very much. Well, staying with this, let's cross to Rory Challens now in occupied East Jerusalem. Rory, what details are you hearing from the Israelis about this new operation in central Gaza?
Earlier on Thursday, the Israeli military released a statement talking about this operation in the Nusayrat camp. Now, what they say is the 162nd Division began a precise intelligence-based operation to eliminate terrorist operatives and strike terrorist infrastructure in central Gaza. They say that the troops on the ground were supported by planes in the sky bombing targets before the troops went in, and also there were warships out off the coastline who were striking targets along that coast of central Gaza. Now, this fits in with what we know about Israel's force structure at the moment in central Gaza. A few days ago, they pulled out a large majority of their ground forces, particularly from the Khan Yunis area, basically saying that the Khan Yunis operation, which had been going on for several weeks, if not months, had been concluded satisfactorily. And what they were doing was they were pulling the main division out and leaving the Nahal Brigade, part of the 162nd Division, in a central part of Gaza, basically splitting the strip in two. And they said that this brigade would be responsible for stopping people going back to the north and also being able to raid north and south of their position and take on the targets that they saw fit. And this is really what we're seeing at the moment, this Nahal brigade basically doing raiding operations wherever the Israeli military feels that it's needed. And until we see this full assault on Rafah, which Benjamin Netanyahu has been promising for weeks now, says there is a date for it, I think we're going to see plenty of this type of operation, the kind that we've seen in Nusayrat.
And more ongoing protests and debate on whether the ultra-Orthodox should serve in the Israeli military. I mean, how much of a threat is that to Benjamin Netanyahu's government?
Yeah, there was a protest today in West Jerusalem. A few thousand ultra-Orthodox outside a recruitment centre, military recruitment centre, protesting against what they feel is a law that's coming their way that would strip away this exemption that they have from military service. There have been other protests as well in recent weeks, some of which have ended up fairly violently, clashes with police. Now, this law this exemption that they have from military service goes back right to the beginning of the Israeli state in the late 1940s. The ultra-Orthodox community at the time was told that it didn't have to do military service because it wanted to study the Torah, go to the yeshivas, which are religious schools, and concentrate on religious scholarship. There were only 400 ultra-Orthodox at that time who were granted this exemption because the community was so small. Now it's expanded to about 13% of the entire Israeli population. Still not vast, but much, much bigger than it was. It still has this exemption, though. And many Israelis think this is completely unfair. They say, well, we're in the middle of what we feel is an existential war against Hamas. We are having to go and do our military service and fight. Why aren't you? And also, why aren't the ultra-Orthodox paying their way? They're basically supported largely by the state. So a sore point for many Israelis, the Supreme Court has basically told the government it has to come up with a law to remedy this situation, i.e. to strip the ultra-Orthodox of their exemption. A big problem for Benjamin Netanyahu, though. Does he do this or does he not? If he does, he's going to antagonise two of the parties which are ultra-Orthodox parties in his governing coalition, and that might mean the collapse of the government and him falling from power.
In occupied East Jerusalem for us, Rory, thank you. As humanitarian aid slowly makes its way into Gaza, a trickle of produce along with aid supplies have been allowed to enter the northern areas of the Strip. Well, our Kavut has this update now from Jabalia.
There are some basic supplies and food has arrived to the north of Gaza, such like the eggs, flour, and oranges, potato, tomato, and such things. But all of these doesn't cover the need of the civilians here, and all of this also is not affordable to all of people who are living in the north of Gaza. Because if we can compare between the prices between before the invasion and after the invasion, the gap is very huge. If I want to buy 30 eggs before the war in Gaza, I would buy 30 eggs for $2.50 and $3. But if I want to buy it now, it will cost me $35 or $40, and you can take it as too many supplies and food that arrive to the north of Gaza.
Hezbollah fired several rockets at Israeli positions in the occupied Lebanese territory of Shabah Farms. Israel said it targeted Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon in response. Ali Hashem has more now from Ait Shab in southern Lebanon.
We're currently roaming the line, the separation line between Lebanon and Israel. If you can see, this is the wall just behind me here. The situation could be described as a tense calm. So people seized the opportunity to come to the villages to inspect the amount of destruction. There were several Israeli airstrikes on the Eid day, and also several Hezbollah attacks. However, this didn't really prevent people from coming here. We're also trying to seize the opportunity to come to this area, which has been away from the lens for the past few months due to the huge amount of bombardment, daily bombardment and destruction. This is the border. If you can see, it's just on the other side. It's a very dangerous place, maybe one of the most dangerous places in the world. And we've come here for Al Jazeera. We are the only international